So why wouldn't you just let the market determine? Like, why take this from a mandate perspective? Do you not trust that Canadians, if this is the right fit for them, would, make this their automobile of choice? Why take a mandate approach?
Well,
is there any Canadian companies that are currently in the seller's market of this credit scheme, or is the only seller with volume the American company Tesla?
So,
Okay,
we're going to go rapid fire with this, so be succinct. The additional cost of...
A point of order. And do you believe Canada should force the same vehicle rules on rural Canadians and as downtown Toronto, Vancouver, or Calgary?
So can you please share some of the myths around electric vehicles, the review, the EVAS that drive you the most crazy?
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Today is meeting number 12 of the Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development.
The committee is beginning its study of the electric vehicles availability standards.
Witnesses, Ministère de l'Environnement, Megan Nichols.
Mark Kaushi, General Director, Energy and Transport.
Mr. Derek Hermanutz. Is that correct?
I have a question with respect to some of the dealerships that are in my riding that I represent. According to a recent report, EV adoption nationwide is only 14.6%. There's 69 new car dealerships in Newfoundland and Labrador, and many of them are rural and they're family-run businesses. And they're reporting that they have these EVs just sitting on the lot, taking up space, tying up investment, capital, and it's threatening their viability. I'm just wondering what assessment has been done on how many of those dealerships are being hurt by unsold EV inventory that's tying up consumer choices, and what specific steps you're taking to prevent these mandates from weakening the already limited rural automotive retail network in specifically in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I would say I think that's exactly one of the reasons why we're conducting this review, is to make sure that indeed the standards remain appropriate and fit for purpose, that they are working to the benefit of Canadians and also not hurting the auto sector. In terms of rural and remote regions, we do realize that it's important that there be the right options available for consumers that meet their needs, whether it's for long driving distance, cold weather, certain types and classes of vehicles. In terms of the 14.6%, we've actually seen that go down this year. It's right now sitting at around 9%, and we think that's perhaps due to a range of reasons. For example, the pause to the federal incentives for zero-emission vehicle program. So there is still that upfront cost for zero-emission vehicles. It is a barrier to many Canadians, even though the life cycle costs do tend to work in their favor. So this is exactly the kind of thing we're looking at. We are speaking to the Canadian Automotive Dealers Association, so hearing directly from the Dealers Association on their views about what we should be considering in the review underway.
So I'm just curious, because I do think EVs are, right for certain consumers. So why wouldn't you just let the market determine? Like, why take this from a mandate perspective? Do you not trust that Canadians, if this is the right fit for them, would, make this their automobile of choice? Why take a mandate approach?
Well, I would say that the government has always approached this from the idea that you need a suite of measures in order to promote and support electric vehicle update.
I understand that, but why the mandate? Like, why? I guess that's what I'm getting to, because that signals no choice. That signals Canadians are restricted. So I'm just curious about the mandate component.
One of the reasons actually for the mandate was also because back about 5-10 years ago, there were issues where there was not adequate supply to meet consumer demand. So consumers were having very long waits for electric vehicles. They didn't have a wide range of selections from all different types of classes and segments of the market. So part of the intention is to send a strong signal to the auto sector about the importance of bringing many models to market for Canadians so that the right choices are there.
Yeah, so now that we're in a different environment now, would you suggest then that the mandate would be not necessary given what the sector is telling us now?
Well, we're receiving input, as my colleague mentioned, until midnight on November 4th. We've had a lot of discussions, so we're hearing a range of views from across industry and from other stakeholders. So we'll be taking all of that into account in terms of what options make sense going forward.
And also just to build on that, I mean, I appreciated the information that you gave about, the lower cost to operate. And so, from that perspective, I don't understand why you wouldn't just allow the market to go ahead and transition, as opposed to, I mean, if those benefits are really that great, then why does the government have to continue to take this approach?
Well, I think, there are a range of factors, and one of them is that as zero-emission vehicle production is still ramping up globally, if Canada wants to be able to attract a good proportion of that, given our small market size, we need to use all the tools that we have at our disposal to attract those. I mean, we hear right now about new models that are coming to market that are not being made available in Canada, and the standard is one way of making sure that automakers are bringing that range in place.
How is that going? Like, where are we?
Well, the standard is not, the targets have not actually started to apply yet, as you know, and we've put a pause on the 2026 one. So we're still in early days. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess just a final thought. I mean, a lot of the people in my riding feel this disconnect, especially in rural Canada and the government, and they feel like there's always this top-down approach where, their interests aren't being considered. What do you say to people who live in rural communities that don't like the government telling them what kind of vehicle they can drive, and they feel like it doesn't suit their needs?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't purport to tell them what to think or what to do, but I would just say that, again, I think our goal is to make sure that there's a range of vehicles out there to meet every...
As it relates to the language around mandate, I guess. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to know where I was coming from.
Thank you very much.
You spoke about later this year for the kind of compiling of the results during this review. Do you have a specific plan for sharing the initial results of all of this consultation that you're doing right now?
Thanks for the question. I think that right now we're still in the review. The government, I think, is committed to make a statement, before we proceed to CG1. The timing of that statement, I think, is still to be determined, but we're hoping before the end of the year we'll be able to communicate what the results of the review have been. Okay.
And can you talk a little bit about the review itself? Like, what was the scope or the framework of the consultation? Are there any more details you can provide on that?
To do that, the review looked at a number of issues, including the targets themselves, so the level of ambition going out to 2035 and beyond. We also explored, what kinds of flexibilities we currently have in place in the regulation, and whether those flexibilities should be improved, modified to allow for lower costs in terms of vehicle manufacturing and importation. We've also looked at obviously affordability issues, some of the issues related to price parity in the marketplace, and obviously looking at the competitiveness of the industry overall, wanting to make sure that, as the Prime Minister noted, on the 5th of September, that the regulation remains fit for purpose and is effective and does not bring undue costs on industry. So we're looking at how do we lower costs, how do we increase flexibility in the short term while still keeping a view to the net zero targets in 2050, which are crucial for Canada.
And is part of the review looking at the risks of continuing to pause or fundamentally slowing down this transition? Like, are you looking at the risk of Canada not matching its trade partners, different ZEV mandates, and how we'll be able to compete kind of on the global stage? Or can you comment on that?
I think, that's a valuable or a good question. I think, obviously, Canada's auto sector has to compete globally. And while we're highly integrated with the U.S. automotive market, we do see an uptick in EV sales globally and in Europe and Asia in particular. And so, that certainly is something that I think the government is taking into account. Some parties have stressed that regulatory clarity, regulatory certainty is important in the marketplace. We've heard that from some groups, notably from the charging infrastructure community, as well as from some automotive players. So definitely looking at all of these issues. And obviously the U.S. situation in particular, the impact of tariffs on Canada's auto sector, a really important factor there. So yeah, looking at all of that.
How will car dealers meet their targets if they have no customers or not enough customers looking to buy EVs? Will they have to rely on the compliance credit system? And what are the actual costs of those credits themselves, and who would bear them?
I'll try to remember all those questions. I think, first of all, just a few clarifications. First of all, it's not a requirement for each dealership to meet the sales standard. It's each company. So I just want to make sure that's clear. And again, I just go back to the fact that we're conducting a review right now, particularly to make sure that our standards are still realistic and achievable from a technology.
Okay, if I could ask, have you done an impact assessment of what the compliance credits would be expected to cost in the credit market?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if I understand what is intended by an impact assessment.
The manufacturer is sold 10% of the 20 in the incoming mandate. How much would a credit cost? You surely have done an assessment of what those costs would be for the manufacturer.
Yep. So, Mr. Chair, the way that the credit market works is it's a private transaction between companies. So we don't necessarily have a full line of sight into what that cost will be because it's considered to be a private transaction. It's consumer confidence. We do sometimes receive that information from companies, but it's not something that we can divulge publicly to the committee.
Have you publicly made any statements regarding it costing roughly an equivalent to the $20,000?
What has been said publicly is that because that is an avenue for compliance is to invest $20,000 in charging infrastructure, that is could hypothetically be considered to be the upper bound of a cost, because why would someone pay $20,000 if they can comply at a lower rate by purchasing credits from another company?
There will be potentially a choice between up to probably $20,000 credit and a $20,000 tax on the vehicle. So to my colleague's question, either or, you could have a $20,000 fee added to the cost of the vehicle.
I'm not
because
sure
who's going to bear this cost? Ultimately, the consumer will, correct?
I'm not sure what is intended by a $20,000 tax, but I would just like to say that this is exactly the kind of thing that the review is looking at. So are these compliance flexibilities, such as the purchase of an infrastructure credit for $20,000, is that the appropriate level? Should it be something that is reconsidered to be at a lower level? Is it something that's even effective at all? So all of these things are on the table as part of the review that's underway.
Is there any Canadian companies that are currently in the seller's market of this credit scheme, or is the only seller with volume the American company Tesla? So
there are other companies selling EVs, and I'm not going to get into specific who is. Yeah, we have knowledge of other companies that are selling credits, but I'm not going to get into which ones. I don't think that's appropriate for me.
They're a completely electric company, so they would have excess.
There are other companies, as you know, who only manufacture EVs, and there are others that are doing quite well that manufacture both ICE and EVs. So,
them Canadian, because it seems to me Canadian manufacturers will be exporting their cash on hand to foreign companies to pay for this credit scheme.
So this regulation does not apply to the export of vehicles. Roughly 90% of the vehicles made by Canadian-based OEMs are sold into the U.S. market. So this regulation only applies in the domestic realm, and we do have some companies that are based in Canada that are also selling EVs here. So, they all have different profiles in that regard or different levels of success. But yeah, that there are some Canadian-based companies that are selling EVs here. Are
they selling more EVs than gas-powered vehicles? Like, that's how you gain a credit, correct?
No, just to confirm, in order to gain a credit, an automaker just has to, to gain a credit, you meet the target, the percentage target, and if you exceed that target, then that counts as a credit. You don't have to sell, at least in the early years, there's no need to sell more EVs than ICE vehicles.
As of right now, all the Canadian manufacturers are selling under 20%. I understand there's a pause, so none of them, in theory, would have credit. So my second question is, there seems to be no transparency about this market. How will Canadians know if there's a cost to a new vehicle built in through this compliance credit scheme?
I just wanted to clarify one thing, which is that there is some other flexibilities in the early years where they're called early action credits, which can count towards future target meeting.
Would you characterize the growth of electric vehicles as being incremental, or would you characterize it as being exponential in terms of the growth of electric vehicles globally?
Globally, I think we can say with a fairly high degree of confidence that there's been incremental growth. North America has seen a decline in 2025, but globally, as a whole, we are seeing growth.
And how would you characterize it over the next, say, 5 years by 2030? What would the global market for electric vehicles potentially look like out in the next few years?
So there's a wide range of forecasts, and I think I think it'd be premature for us to speculate given the current short-term situation that we find ourselves in Canada. I think we're looking at a lot of modeling that's out there. There's a wide range. And I think for the North American market in particular, I think we need to be cautious about predictions. But we're definitely looking at this, and but globally, I think there's a fair degree of confidence that we're going to see increased sales, just given the trends we're seeing in the automotive market.
Can you maybe comment on that? If globally the trends are moving in a faster direction, what does that mean for Canada's competitiveness?
So, this is maybe a question more for our colleagues at ISED, but I guess I'll state the obvious that Canada finds itself in a North American marketplace. Historically, we've been highly integrated with the U.S. automotive market. North America has a unique set of features regarding its automotive market. It is not like other automotive markets. So, for example, North Americans tend to buy much larger vehicles than we see consumers buying in Europe and South America, for example. And so, there's some unique attributes to the North American marketplace. But I think generally speaking, we can conclude that and certainly even the automotive sector will tell you this. Electrification is certainly viewed as kind of an unstoppable long-term trend. The question is, how fast should Canada go there, and how fast can we do that in a North American market where we have some countervailing forces, as you know, right now in the short term. So I think it's not a question of if, it's a question of just how fast should we transition there.
So we've heard a lot about rhetoric on both sides of this issue. I'd like some maybe hard stuff for a moment. Have you done any electricity grid demand forecasting out the next 5-10 years? Could you provide that data?
Yes. So provincial system operators, as you know, do demand forecasting for the provinces, right?
Specifically, including the EV mandate requirements.
That's right. So in our RIAS, we did do electricity forecasting or electricity system impact forecasting.
How recently was that?
2023 was the last.
So is that including any of the potential grid requirements with new economy, AI, data centers?
Yeah, it would have probably preceded that data center.
Okay, so do you plan to update that?
So that is certainly, that is part of our review, and when we go to see,
we're going to go rapid fire with this, so be succinct. The additional cost of...
A point of order. Rapid fire is fine, but when we have two people talking at the same time, it's hard for the...
Hard for the interpreters. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
if you, the grid build-out related to that, do you capture that in terms of the cost to the consumer for the EV mandate?
Yeah, that was, I think, Derek, maybe I'll turn to you on
Could
that.
you quantify that? How much per unit is the grid build-out required by the EV mandate going to cost the consumer?
Yes, when we do the analysis, it's a integrated analysis, so it takes into account increased electricity demand, and we do model the provincial systems, so we would have an idea of how that would affect rates in each province.
So can you tell me how much per unit?
I
Just
don't
the
have
transmission
that.
cost?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can provide that, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, to the committee.
By imposing the mandates, Canada is pushing, most recent narrative, Canada is pushing vehicle production south to the U.S. And has the department conducted any economic analysis on how the regulations have hurt the domestic auto manufacturing? Do they reflect the reality of today, and are you going to update that forecasting?
Clarify, Mr. Chair, that the mandate does not apply to manufacturing in Canada. It's to vehicles sold in Canada. 90% of our manufacturing goes to the U.S., but we will be looking at all of this as part of the review.
I understand that, but manufacturing is leaving, right? We have plants closing, jobs, the billions of dollars that are put into the battery plants, and nothing's happening, right? We're not going to build anything. And yet at the same time, we've got local companies like, domestic companies like Edison Motors that are building diesel hybrids that are not necessarily plug-in hybrids. They're far more efficient than what the status or the equivalent market is, having great deal of difficulty bumping into ECCC to get their product approved to even develop. So where does the department sit on this?
Could the member just clarify which item you would like the department to weigh in on?
So all of them? I would like to know, first off, do you know how much you're hurting manufacturing? Like, what is the cost of the manufacturing? How many jobs do you think are going to flee the country?
Again, the mandate does not apply to manufacturing. It applies to sales.
I understand that, but it's the consequence of the mandate. And so manufacturers are ceasing operations and transferring operations out of the country.
I would say that at this point, we do not have any evidence to show that that is due to the electric vehicle availability standard.
Tell that to the thousands of people that are out of their jobs. We'll go to the hybrid or the diesel hybrid electric.
So just on that point, take the point about Edison. These regulations don't apply to Edison, just to be clear.
No, absolutely. That's my point.
Yeah, so they
don't apply, so they cannot get approval to develop their hybrid diesel electric.
No, I don't think that's correct. So the Edison issue, and I don't want to get too much into it because I don't think it would be appropriate, but those are the on-road regulations for air pollution and the heavy-duty truck regulations. So,
right?
but
same department.
Yeah, but this is not the EVAS, so just to be clear on that point.
Doesn't matter, right? You're not letting these local innovators evolve into something that might be useful because it's a ground-up development. We've heard lots of talk about, the mandates being a strong signal, and the strong signal is sending manufacturing out of Canada. Are you quantifying at all the EV credits that are being paid by domestically?
Sorry about that. Time is up.
How does Canada's approach to electric vehicles compare to the U.S. and the European Union? And how does that alignment support our competitiveness?
So, as I mentioned, I think in the opening statement, we see a number of U.S. states, New York, California, Washington State, others who have at the state level set their own targets for electric vehicles. I think that the last calculation we had was representing roughly 40% of the market. There's 11 states roughly that have put in place their own targets. Obviously. The U.S. government has announced its intent to repeal its existing greenhouse gas regulations for vehicles. So our assumption is that those measures will disappear, although no final rule has been tabled in that regard from the U.S. government. So we're waiting to see, as Megan mentioned, the outcome of that. That's the situation in the U.S. The European Union does have EV targets. The United Kingdom has EV targets. China has EV targets. Other countries, other jurisdictions do as well.
In rural and northern Canada, people rely on long-distance travel. And in harsh conditions, how will this mandate protect their mobility and safety?
Mr. Chair, that is certainly something that we took into consideration in designing the availability standard. For example, we have made sure to include plug-in hybrid vehicles as considered to be zero-emission vehicles under the standard. So plug-in hybrids have both the electric capability as well as traditional gas motors, so they can provide that extra backup that could be required for some Canadians. Similarly, we do see that even though range can be reduced in very cold weather, with the rapid technological improvements that are happening in this technology, that range will only improve. We see very high rates of electric vehicle uptake in other cold countries such as Norway, where they're currently at 90%. And I would also say this is another reason why the availability standard increases the sales standards over time, recognizing that it will take time for those technological improvements to happen.
Okay, and do you believe Canada should force the same vehicle rules on rural Canadians and as downtown Toronto, Vancouver, or Calgary?
So our regulations are national application, and appreciate the point that rural communities, like particularly charging infrastructure, may be a concern. That being said, when we look at the data, the average Canadian does not travel more than 17 kilometers a day in their commute. So EV range now more than covers that, and so we don't see, like, I appreciate the comment that long travel may be a concern in rural communities, and for that, as we mentioned, PHEVs and existing conventional vehicles are able to handle that.
And I would like to just get an answer in yes and no. Will Canadians pay more vehicles under this mandate?
It's hard to give just a yes or no answer. Right now, the upfront price is higher, but over the life cycle of the car, Canadians will save money.
Okay, I would like to share my time with my colleague, David Baxter. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to follow up on a question. You indicated 17 kilometers per day is the average Canadian commute. And that goes directly to my colleague's question about the difference between the life of rural Canadians versus downtown Toronto. My commute was 100 kilometers one way when I was working as a professional. This is not the same environment at all. And so the question is, how are these mandates going to affect the supply of the appropriate variety of vehicles to supply the market of consumers that live in rural and remote regions in Canada?
Happy to answer that question. Right now, the range of vehicles is continually improving. We're seeing over 400-kilometer range in some cases. And again, plug-in hybrid vehicles, which have the gas engine as well, are part of our electric vehicle availability standards, so that there will be a wide range of choices for consumers.
A wide range of choices, but choice of the adequate capabilities and ranges and capacities.
Yeah.
And you're impacting this in a very negative way for that particular demographic. That particular stretch or parcel of the Canadian population is not going, because you're impacting the manufacturers, and the supply is not going to be there. I would like to go back to the diesel hybrid question, because I think we kind of got off track here. The diesel hybrid does not seem to be accepted or included in your EV standard equivalent. And that is a local Canadian domestic production, innovation. And so why is that?
Yeah, so I think you're referring to HEVs or conventional hybrids. So I think I don't think there's a country that sees or classifies HEVs as a zero-emission vehicle, because they are largely combustion vehicles.
No, they are plug-in hybrids, right? It just has a different battery capacity and maybe not the arbitrary range designation.
Plug-in hybrids are eligible under the regulation.
But with the range capacity, right, that they have to have a certain range. So this particular product serves a very, very important market niche, and it's domestically developed, and it's not included, and there's no apparent avenue to include it. So why is that?
So yeah, Edison is not captured by these regulations. They're not subject to the regulations. So
but it doesn't qualify under these regulations either.
Yeah.
You're welcome to send the response in writing if you prefer to the clerk.
We all have a strong role to play on communications. I think about that a lot in terms of climate communications and how do we myth bust. There's a very loud lobbying effort happening across Canada. There are a lot of countercurrents to climate and environmental progress. So I'd like to use a bit of this time for myth busting. So can you please share some of the myths around electric vehicles, the review, the EVAS that drive you the most crazy, and what the actual truth of that myth is? I know you can do it.
Yeah, I think obviously this is an industry in flux. This is a product obviously that's evolving. Certainly a couple of things jump out at me. So on life cycle emissions, as I mentioned, I think that one in particular is a concern. Certainly, like there's ample evidence to suggest that life cycle emissions are lower from zero emission vehicles. I think that is intuitive, but it's also borne out by studies, various studies, including in Canada. I think obviously range has improved quite a bit, so I know people are still concerned, and range anxiety in particular is, I think, it's come up during our review, and it remains a preoccupation for those that don't want to buy an EV, and I think that's a legitimate preoccupation and concern. On the other hand, we've seen pretty steady improvements in range in EVs, and the technology continues to get better. Is it where it needs to be? I think that's a fair question, but certainly, given what we see in terms of how much people actually drive in a day, generally speaking, and the improvements in range, I think that certainly would be one of those on my list of things. So anyway, I'll leave those two. If others want to raise others.
None?
Well, I do think, going back again to the intersection with our domestic manufacturing sector and making that distinction, that it's not a mandate on manufacturing, that it's a mandate on sales, I think is an important distinction that sometimes gets lost. And also just one that we've been circling around at this meeting, just around choice for Canadians. And, part of the purpose of the standard is actually to improve choice for Canadians, to make sure that there is a wide range of electric vehicles that can meet the needs of all Canadians. It's not meant to take choice away, but it's actually meant to increase choice.